Hey there, everybody. Professor Cloud here, or Brian if you prefer. We're back with a further discussion of Microsoft's OpenAI. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at two different demonstration products to show you how OpenAI can potentially be leveraged within real-world examples. The first is a PowerApp that I created to show off some of GPT's capabilities. The other is Microsoft's recent release that just came out a few days ago called Designer, where that particular product is built on top of the Dall-E models, allowing you to generate images. But let's start with the PowerApp that you see right here in front of you. And this PowerApp is going to connect to an OpenAI implementation that I have in my own Azure subscription. And it is going to be leveraging the DaVinci tier of the GPT model. And I did that so that I had all of the available functionality that GPT provides, rather than limiting myself to something that might be in only Ada or might be only in Cabbage. What we've got here is a text box, which is right underneath of the OpenAI test. And I am going to be pushing text into that. And then using that text, we're going to be generating a particular type of response that GPT can provide. Now, one of the things to keep in mind here is this is a public endpoint implementation of GPT. I do not have it secured or locked down in any way, but that is 100% possible. It is also using the public trained model. I have not trained it on any of my own data of any kind. So let's start with the easiest one, and one that I think that is going to get very heavily used, which is summarization. So taking a large piece of text and reducing it down to something smaller. So if we click on the summarized text here, we've got a description of what a neutron star is, and it's a it's a paragraph long, 4 or 5 sentences. We want to reduce that down to something smaller. All I'm going to do is click on the submit button, and that's going to send this request over to DaVinci and return with a response. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, I didn't mention this in the overview, as you do go up in tiers of the individual models, you are also, of course, increasing cost. Not a lot, but you are increasing cost. But you're also going to increase the amount of time it takes to return responses. And that's because as you go up in tier, those models become more complex and therefore can take more time in returning responses. Now, we're not talking about minutes, but we're talking about, say, 1 versus 2 seconds, 2 versus 3 seconds. You get the idea. So with the summarization capability, I was able to take what is about a 5-sentence paragraph and reduced it down to a 2-sentence paragraph. Now, the way that this happened is the prompt for summarization expects 2 different pieces of data. One, the large piece of data that it's going to summarize, and then what exactly is it doing? And in this case, TLDR, meaning give me the short-handed version of what this text is. But this is just one capability that's available inside of GPT. If we then move over to SQL, just like we talked about in the overview deck, you have the ability to use GPT for codex-like functions, meaning give me code from natural language, give me natural language from code. And you can be very, very specific about it. In this instance, the prompt is describing what kind of information is needed to generate a SQL statement. There are 3 tables: employee, department, and salary. There is the definition or reference that this should be Postgres rather than one of the other flavors of database. And then what exactly should the query be? It's a query to list the names of the departments which employed more than 10 employees in the last 3 months. It should be a select statement. So again, we click submit. And unlike what I showed you in the overview deck, we get a much more complex select statement. It is now returning a set of select columns from a 3-table join and a where clause, a group by clause, and a having count. Much more complex than the very simple select clause that I showed you in the overview deck. So you can get very, very specific about this. Next is classifications. Now, there's two different forms of this that I'm going to show you. This first one is saying, okay, I want you to classify a news article into one of the following categories: business, tech, politics, sport, and entertainment. It then feeds the news article context. Donna Stephenson is cooking up a new kind of perfection. So this is a very simple classification exercise, and it returns back with entertainment, as you would expect. But if we want to look at something that's a little bit more complex, the following is a list of companies and the categories they fall into. So we give 5 examples to train the model: Facebook, LinkedIn, Uber, Unilever, and McDonald's. And then gives categories for what those particular companies fall into. And they range. 2 of them have social media and technology, but then we've also got marketplace, we've got conglomerate, we've got logistics, we've got a whole slew of different categories. But of course, that's not every single type of category. And then it asks to provide a list of categories for FedEx, which is why there's open text next to the colon. So we want to get the response back that would put that text next to the colon. Delivery, logistics, transportation, and freight. Now, of those 4, logistics did show up in the original trained list, but the other 3 definitely are not there. So it gives you an idea of how to perform additional types of classification, but now using examples to help train the model based on, so that you can get a better confident response. The last one that I'm going to show you is parsing. And in this instance, we're also going to help train. So we have a piece of text that talks about fruit on a particular planet, but it's in this big paragraph form. So how do you get the necessary information from this paragraph pertaining to just the fruit? So what it does is it says, okay, please make a table summarizing the fruits from the planet. And then it gives you an example of what the fruit table should look like. It starts off with column headers of fruit color and flavor, and then gives 2 examples of fruit, their color, and their flavor. So what this is going to do is read that paragraph about the planet Goocrux and provide every single fruit that it sees, the color associated, and the flavor. And there we go. Punits, Loop Novas, and Glaus, bright green, neon pink, and pale orange, and then savory, cotton candy, sour, bitter, acidic, and caustic. It gathered all of that data from the piece of text using the reference that we gave it of what that structure should look like. There's a lot of different types of capabilities here. Now, you'll notice there's one additional button in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's Write Article. Now, that is something that I am going to show in a future video of how to update this app to leverage additional capabilities, including ones that exist in other Azure Cognitive Services. But you can put in a prompt, and this is going to be the basis for the capabilities in, say, Outlook or in, say, Word. And you're going to ask GPT to write me a paragraph, write me an email, write me an advertisement and you're going to give some descriptions about what it should do. And then GPT is going to provide you a larger piece of text rather than a smaller piece of text. And that's where the generative AI comes into play. Now, one of the things I want to make sure to call out here, and this is back to the summarized text. The GPT models do have limitations as well as a large number of parameters. And all of the information about what those parameters are and their descriptions can be found inside the documentation. I'm going to provide a few links both within the corresponding blog post that this video is a part of, as well as in the description in YouTube. But that documentation will talk primarily about one big thing, and that's tokens. These models expect text tokens. And the definition of those, again, is in the documentation. I don't want to dive too deep into that. This is an overview set of videos. But the keep in mind here is that there is always going to be a limitation. So, for example, with summarizing, where we're taking large and reducing it to small, there is still going to be a max number of tokens that you can actually process. Now, it is configurable, but there is at the end of the day a max limit, a hard limit that you cannot go past, and that is 4,000 tokens. Now, how that corresponds to the text that you want to have summarized, that's going to differ from text to text, but you get a better idea of how much text you can use. Now, I'll give you a good example. I actually have this currently configured for 1,000 tokens, and I went and grabbed the first 4 or 5 paragraphs from Wikipedia on Harley Quinn, the comic book villain, and that was too much. I had to reduce it down to about 3 to 3.5 paragraphs before I could actually run it appropriately. So something to keep in mind as you start working with GPT, make sure that you understand what those parameters are that can be passed into the request so that you can guarantee a more confident response based on what you're trying to achieve. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the second demo, which is Microsoft Designer. Hey there. What we're looking at right now is designer.microsoft.com. This just got released last week. So this is April 9th. It got released on April, I believe it was the 6th or 7th. And designer.microsoft.com is a tool that Microsoft created to allow for individuals to use the Dall-E model to create images. So what we're looking at is a tool that actually sits on top of that Dall-E model. So if you, for example, look at, and this is just a fresh screen of designer.microsoft.com. It puts an Instagram post about my cosmetic product launch on April 1st. And then if you look at the different examples over on the right-hand side, they will give you some examples of what that might look like. But let's be a little bit more specific so that you can see it live in action. Let's start with something simple. From the slide deck, for example, a white Siamese cat. And click Generate. Now, we're probably not going to get the exact same image that we showed in the slide deck, but we get a number of images of a white Siamese cat. I will be honest with you, I'm not a cat guy, so I can't tell you if they're all accurate, but I can guarantee you that at least 3 or 4 of them are, and there is a scroll of all of them. Now, you'll notice some of them have text. It's nothing more than just associated text with the images. Now, let's see if we can actually get it to remove any text so that we can just get the white Siamese cat. Apparently not, no. Well, what else can it do? Let's do something a little bit different. And let's say birthday card. Actually, here, let's do this even. A Gothic Batman-based birthday card for my sister, Leslie. By the way, I don't have a sister, Leslie, but you get the idea. And I did this specifically for a reason. I'm curious to see. Okay. I'll be honest, this isn't a very good representation at all. It does give me the happy birthday, Leslie, as you would expect. And this one, maybe this one, are the closest ones to showing a Batman symbol. We also, though, do have bats in a couple of them, so that's nice. These two are at least Gothic in nature. So, obviously it's not perfect, but it will get you potentially started. Now, here's another very, very cool thing about Dall-E. It doesn't always have to create something from scratch. You can also create something based on an existing image. So, in my spare time, I mentioned this earlier, I am a content creator, especially in the gaming community. And I have my own logo and my own tagline. I'm Professor Cloud. So if we find my logo, which I happen to have here on my device, and bring it up, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and try and generate some images based off of this logo. But it doesn't really know what kind of an image to create. Should it create a banner, a logo? What should it do? That's where we then say charity event announcement. for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I'm doing this specifically because every year I do a charity event to help support St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and it's taking my logo and creating that. Now, again, these are very simplistic responses. I could potentially ask for the St. Jude logo to be included. Let's try that with St. Jude logo. Unfortunately, well, first of all, the responses are definitely better. They look cleaner. They look more like an announcement, especially this one here and this one here. But it did not grab the St. Jude logo. So again, these generative AIs are not perfect. They are not perfect in any way. But they do help you get started with, in this case, graphical design of some type or kind. Now, this is just from my imagination, my specific thoughts and processes for use cases. I have no doubt in my mind that people who are much more tightly ingrained in the graphic design community could come up with some much better examples. I want to try one additional one, and this one put some parameters around the sizing. So one of the things that as a content creator we have are emotes. These emotes, though, are very small. They have to be able to sit inside of a chat screen. So I want to try and limit the size of my image. Pixelated image of Scooby-Doo 64 by 64. Oops. Let me try that again. I forgot to remove my logo. Yeah, so it knows how to create images, but it doesn't necessarily have references to like proper names or special individuals or things like that. So you are seeing limitations. And you know that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, let's make this a little bit more generic. A pixelated image of Scooby-Doo is just a hound at the end of the day. Of a let's just say hound. Pixelated image of a hound 64 by 64 and see what that does. So, it did at least start giving me pictures of hounds. Well, no, not really. So, it's using pixelated hound as a tagline. The problem is almost none of these dogs, and I am a dog guy, and I happen to have a hound, are hounds. But you could probably, let's do Basset Hound and try again. That's a more specific image. Yeah, so it's focusing on the pixelated image and not the Basset Hound part. It's using the Basset Hound as text. So, as great as this is as a starting point, it's never going to solve the problem of humans being able to create images. It's never going to replace them. But you get the idea of what it has the capabilities of doing. You can see here, this is a Basset Hound and it is a pixelated image. But what it did was it broke these two things down into two different pieces of the response. So this is going to take time to learn. It's going to take time to use. And it's definitely going to be a great starting point. But it's never, ever going to replace human artists out there creating specific images that you need, or logos, or if you already have something to start from, as we already saw, those things are kind of very easy to start from. But creating something from scratch, you're going to have to learn the right terminology. So hopefully these two demos give you an idea of what kinds of capabilities the OpenAI services can provide. One that's based off of an actual Microsoft product sitting on top of a service, and the other one based off of a PowerApp that I created, leveraging my own OpenAI deployments in my own subscription. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in any of the comments. And as always, if you do like this content, please make sure to hit the like button. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button. And hopefully I'll see you in a future video. Thank you very much.